This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to week 3 of effective copywriting. This week, we're going to do something new. We're going to start learning about writing taglines for our nonprofit organization, and you'll learn about the difference between a tagline and a headline. We're going to do some graduate level research this week and start on our research paper, and then we're going to do some revisions to the testimonial ads that I got your feedback to you today. So please make sure you're looking over the feedback as you go into the revisions for week 3. But I'll explain all that as we move along. The first thing I want to talk about, because it's the first thing that you have due this week, is a tagline. So I want to talk about what taglines are and how they operate and how then you can come to write taglines for your nonprofit organization. This is a busy week, so the tagline writing workshop is the first thing that's up because by Friday, you need to post 10 taglines with 10 rationales to the discussion board. So I'm going to go over what a tagline is. I just heard someone pop in. All right. Hi, Sandy. I'm just going to get started now. The recording's going. Okay. So according to George Felton, who wrote our textbook, Advertising Concept or Copy, a tagline is basically that slogan or that little, piece of persuasion that's usually resides next to a logo. It's part of the essence of the brand, so you want to think of it as that. So you'll be creating some taglines that echo the essence of your brand. That's why I keep telling everybody to pay attention to the mission statement of the nonprofit organization that you're creating your campaign for, because the mission statement reveals a lot. So some examples of some tried and true taglines, some of which that are still used today, are American Express's "Don't Leave Home Without It." Disney World's "The Happiest Place on Earth." Back in the day when Dunkin' Donuts only made donuts, they had a character that they used that represented the brand with the little donut maker, and it was always time to make the donuts. Your Lucky Charms has been using "Magically Delicious" since I was a kid, so that's a really good tried and true one. Must See TV was the moniker or the slogan that NBC gave to their Thursday night lineup back in the 90s. And it's not just a job, it's an adventure. So the armed forces even have taglines. So what you want to think about are how taglines are these little portable pieces of persuasion, these little chunks of language that people carry around in their heads. So when I say Nike, the first thing that should pop in your head probably is "just do it." Okay? So that's a tagline. So what you're going to be doing this week is to come up with 10 taglines for your nonprofit organization. Now, in this assignment, there are some PDFs attached, so make sure you are reading those first. Read those sections in the Advertising Concept and Copy book about taglines, and then I want you to write 10 taglines. You're going to put them up in the discussion board, number them 1 to 10, and then under each tagline, you're going to give a strong rationale in a sentence or 2 or 3 about how that tagline came about, what made you construct it the way you did, the words that you chose. Remember, your rationales have to be supported with research. So that's why I pointed out the Felton chapter and the PDFs that I attached. All the information that you need to write strong rationales is right there. But let's think about how we can come up with taglines for our nonprofit. So something you can think about is elevating the nonprofit organization. And if you're later on working on a product or a service, it's the same thing. You want to look at that product or service's benefits. Remember, not the features. Everybody's got features. It's the benefits. That's what separates them from the pack. So choose the best benefit of your nonprofit organization. For example, Red Rover is an animal charity that not only helps save animals, but they also help pet owners keep their animals by providing grants to pet owners that are having some sort of issues. So you want to think about the benefit of your nonprofit organization, and you could create taglines around the benefit. You can talk about what differentiates your nonprofit organization from all the others in the group. So differentiation is what sets you apart. So if you need to dig deeper into what differentiates your animal charity or children's charity from others in the same group, do a SWOT analysis. Come up with the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats that are attached to your nonprofit organization, and that will reveal the unique selling proposition that is attached to your nonprofit organization. And that's a good place to look for your tagline inspiration. You can use an example here is leaning it up against something. So back, I guess it was the 90s, Oprah went on a tirade about beef and how she was never going to eat beef again, and she was only going to eat chicken and fish. So pork kind of jumped on that opportunity, and they took their product and leaned it up against the benefits of chicken, and they called themselves the other white meat. So that's how you lean something up against it. You can compare it to something else. Some other creative writing techniques that you might want to think about using are parallelism. A really good example of parallelism is the Survivor TV show's tagline that they've used for all 38 episodes, which is outwit, outlast, outplay. What you have going on with parallelism here, it's where the sentence elements are identical in thought and have identical grammatical form. And so outwit, outlast, outplay has alliteration going on with each word starting with O. That's alliteration. And then it's got the syllabic form with each word being 2 syllables. So it's got a nice rhythm to it. So think about parallelism. The other thing about the power of threes is that people naturally can remember trinities, things that come in threes. So play around with something like outwit, outlast, outplay. Opposition is an interesting way to think about a tagline. You can take a benefit of your nonprofit organization or later on your product or service and play it up by talking about the complete opposite. So Frank Perdue, the original owner of Perdue Chicken, was this little skinny guy, and his tagline for Perdue Chicken was, "It takes a tough man to make a tender chicken." So he was looking at the opposite because he didn't look like such a tough man, but he did make tender chicken. Metaphor and simile, these are talking about one thing in terms of another. Simile uses like or as. So here Chevy Trucks is using simile as a place to write a tagline because they say their Chevy trucks are like a rock. So that's a simile, uses like or as. So some tips for writing your taglines. Remember, the shorter the better. The list I gave you earlier, they were pretty short, magically delicious. So I say the rule of thumb is no longer than 7 words. The shorter, the better. Remember, you want people to, remember your tagline. You want it to rattle around inside their head so when they see your nonprofit's name, the tagline comes to mind. This is a good tip too. If you are doing a nonprofit organization and their name doesn't kind of say what they are, for example, there's a charity called Kaboom, and unless the tagline told you it was a children's charity that involves children's play, you wouldn't know that from just the name. So if your tagline, if your company name doesn't reveal what they do, then use your tagline to reinforce what your company does. Once you decide on a tagline, you want to use it on everything and be consistent. So it should be on your print materials, on your website, your receptionist, when she answers the phone, should say it. So taglines are something that increase with familiarity through time and consistency. So you want to make sure it's unique to your business. I always say if you're tasked with creating taglines, go out into the internet and search and see if it's being used for anything. You want to avoid cliches, and you want to make sure that it's true because it's the essence of your brand, so it should be true. Now here's a quote from me. I have a pet peeve about make a difference. And it's funny, I'm seeing it more and more and more. It is so overused. It is so cliched. I mean, it really doesn't mean anything anymore. We know your nonprofit wants to make a difference. My nonprofit wants to make a difference. We all want to make a difference. come up with a new way of saying make a difference. So I don't want to see any taglines with make a difference. If I see those 3 words in a tagline, you're going to lose 5 points because I want you to be creative and go beyond make a difference. Okay. Some additional resources for you. The taglineguru.com website is really good. So it's taglineguru.com. You have examples. He gives you insights into taglines and some really good resources. The textbook, Advertising Concept and Copy, has some. Also available to you through Safari Books Online. You can log in with your Full Sail credentials to safaribooksonline.com. There are some really good copywriting books right there for you. So expand your knowledge base by going in and create a little folder with all your copywriting books so that you have these resources available for you now for the projects that you're going to be working on in the remainder of this course and in your courses to come. Okay, so the first assignment due is your 10 taglines for your nonprofit organization. You're going to put those in the discussion board, number them 1 through 10. Under each tagline should be a strong rationale supporting the creation of that tagline so that people understand where it came from. Then what you're going to do by Sunday is we're going to workshop the taglines of our classmates. What that means is you're going to go in and you're going to choose 3 classmates and you're going to read all their taglines and rationales. Out of those 10, you're going to choose the 3 strongest and explain why they are the strongest. And then you're going to choose the 3 weakest and give a strong rationale as to why you think they're weak. Now, I'm challenging you to write your reply posts in the 3rd person. So that means you don't use I think, I will, I want, my idea, my. No I, no my. The easiest way to write in 3rd person is if you say the word, I think your tagline works because, just lop off the I think. Your tagline works because, and then finish the sentence. So that's how easy it is to write in 3rd person. What we want you to do is to stop relying on your opinion because, that's not grounded in the research. It might be, and you can use it when you're pitching to a client. But for this project alone, I want you to think about writing in 3rd person as you're responding to your classmates, just for good practice. Okay, the next thing coming up that we're going to work on over the next 2 weeks is the campaign research paper. It's due the Sunday of week 4, but I highly recommend that you get started with it now. At least get the research part of it done. And to be perfectly honest, you've already done some of the research, so I'll go into that as we go through the outline. So this research paper, it's 8 to 10 pages. It is, it's 5 to 7 pages, and it's really about your campaign that you're pitching to your client for the nonprofit organization. What this research paper can give you is all the talking points that you're going to need when you're in that room pitching to a client. So doing your research, understanding the organization inside and out, understanding your rationales for the design decisions you make are only going to benefit you. So this exercise is all about getting you comfortable with that. So you're going to start, and all of this is on the platform. So this is the outline. If you answer all the bullet points under each section, then the paper is going to come together really easily. So you want to, in the introduction, tell us who your nonprofit organization is. You want to talk about the problem statement. Remember, most nonprofit organizations' problem statements revolve around raising money and raising awareness. So talk about that. Then you're going to state your thesis. Now remember, the last sentence of your paragraph on the introduction should be the thesis statement. That's the backbone of your paper. It's that theory that you put forth that is the premise that you're going to be proving throughout the paper. So you're explaining the advertising campaign. So there is a sample thesis statement on the platform if you struggle with writing one. The next section of the paper is the body of the paper. So the body of the paper is going to give specific details on the company. Tell me about their history. Do the research by going to their website. And remember, you're doing this in APA style, so directly quote from your sources using proper in-text citations and list everything on your reference page. Tell us how they started. Why did they start? What's their origin story? Understanding where they came from can really help you as you're constructing this campaign to understand who they are and what they do. Then you want to talk about what differentiates your nonprofit organization from the competition. Now remember, in week 1, we did the Settle and Alric 15 catalog of needs, so you have research done right there on the psychology of advertising, and you also examine the competition of your nonprofit. So some of that research is done. The next thing you want to do is talk about the target audience. Last week, you did your target audience profiles, which I'm going to grade and get back to you tomorrow. That's the research already done for your target audience. So talk about who the customer is. Who are you selling your nonprofit to either get them to make a donation or to come out and volunteer or just to raise awareness? The next thing you want to do is describe the voice and tone of the campaign. In what way does the voice speak to the nonprofit's target audience? Again, in week 1, you wrote a paper about voice and tone. So those sources are right there for you to use. So that research is already done. Then you want to end this part of the body of the paper by talking why this project is important to the nonprofit. Why are you solving the problem? That kind of echoes what they do and why they do it. So you want to stay focused on that, because remember, everything circles back to your thesis statement. It's what you're proving throughout your argument. So the next part of the body, and again, follow these bullet points and just figure out how to talk about each one of them, and you'll do really well on the paper. You want to talk about the media plan. So we know you're already doing magazine print ads. That's what we're designing for the campaign. Those testimonial ads are the print portion. What else? When you are in a client pitch, you have their undivided attention. So they've asked you for something specific. Now you've done all this research and you understand their target audience, that you can now pitch some other types of media to them so that they hire you to not only do the print ads, but to do these other things. So maybe it's redesigning their website or coming up with a transmedia campaign, beefing up their social media presence. So talk about the media plan with the print ads, but then explain what else you can do for the client. What other media should they use? You want to be specific as you're talking about the media plan, so make sure that your research coincides with your target audience. If your target audience is adults ages 55 to 80, you're not going to be talking about Snapchat. You want to think about who your target audience is and how do they ingest media. What are their media choices? And that's how you construct your media plan. The last thing you're going to do in the body of the paper is now the meat of the paper. It's what you're pitching to the client. So you want to tell them what these ads are going to look like. Who are the testimonials? Who are the spokespeople and why? What is the color scheme and why? What is the typography choices and why? You want to do some design research. Next month you're going into a class called design research, so let's get started on that now. You want to use facts that back up your claims. The research supports your target audience. These colors, these fonts, this voice and tone, it all is meant to work with your target audience. So I want you to focus on that. Then at the last thing you're going to do, and I'll go into more specifics next week, is you're going to write the conclusion, which kind of wraps up the paper in a nice little bow, and then you're going to write the abstract. But this week I just want you to get started on the introduction and the body of the paper, because you're going to do some additional research. You might have like the website, might have something from the Felton book, and you might have something from the voice and tone paper, but you need 5 to 7 secondary sources. So you need to go to the library and find at least 2 secondary sources from the library. So you're going to go into those databases like EBSCOhost. I prefer Academic Search Premier in EBSCOhost because I get the best results from that. But you're going to look for scholarly, peer-reviewed sources. So the sources that you find should coincide with what the argument that you're constructing and how you're proving it. So you want to ask this question of any piece of research that you're thinking of using. Will this resource help me answer my research question? If you come up with a yes, then you need to go and take that piece of research and put it in your folder that you're going to use later. But you want to make sure that the source is authoritative and that the author is an expert. It's not just an opinion piece and some guy making unsubstantiated claims. You want to make sure that it's current. You don't want to use like an article from Time magazine from 1947. That's not going to help you create a case for social media. So you want to think about using current sources. You want to make sure as you're evaluating the source that they're using their sources sufficiently and correctly. And again, you want to look at how the tone of the piece is, make sure it's not an opinion piece. The questionable resources are coming from just a plain old Google search, which you shouldn't be doing at the graduate level, but sometimes to get started, you might go to Wikipedia and then see what sources they're using, but you should really avoid the .com websites because they're trying to sell you something. You want to make sure they're not using quotes with no in-text citations and that they're not making unsubstantiated claims or that there's no date to the website. So you want to avoid the questionable websites. Like I said, you need 5 to 7 secondary sources. 2 must come from the library, and you must format them in APA style, which you've been doing since month 1 in Mastery. And I gave you back your week 1 research papers with a lot of advice if you were like maybe writing in first person instead of third person, or maybe your in-text citation punctuation was a little off. I gave you all the insights in week 1. So go back to that paper that I sent back with your comments and open them up and see where I marked up your text. Remember, your reference page is going to be the last page of the paper. It should be on its own page, and you want to make sure your sources are listed in correct APA style. They should be in alphabetical order, last name of the author. If there is no author's name, then you use the title of the web page, not the company name, but the title of the page if it's the About page, and then you give the URL of the website. Okay? Now, a lot of you find really good research, but I want you to get in the habit of using it well. So what you want to do is introduce the research, not just plop in the quote. Never start a paragraph with a direct quote. You want to always introduce and lead the reader into your quote. So your paragraph should have a topic sentence that kind of, construct the argument for that paragraph. And then you introduce a quote using an action verb. These are action verbs, and this list is located in the About section of FSO. I actually have a copy of this that hangs over my desk, so when I write papers, I'm not always introducing a quote by saying, John Smith states, John Smith states, John Smith states. I might say, John Smith argues. He then later objects. Maybe he responds. Then he later reveals. So switching up your language just makes you a better writer. So if you find yourself being repetitive, avoid that by using your thesaurus, using this list of action verbs to introduce your quote. Because what you want to do is introduce the quote, then give us the quote, then the sentence after the direct quote and the in-text citation should be a sentence in your own words explaining how this piece of research, how this direct quote supports the argument that you're making. Now, if you think about it, if you have 5 secondary sources, and you have to write 3 sentences, one introducing the quote, and then the sentence after the quote explaining the quote, you've already written 15 sentences. So think of it like that. Okay, so download your action verbs and use that to help you help with your language choices. Okay, testimonial ad revisions. I was really impressed with the ads that came in today that I looked at. I sent you feedback. I gave suggestions. Now, the thing about Full Sail and what separates us from the pack, what our differentiation factor is that we give equal opportunities to every person out there who wants an education. So as a result, people coming into the Media Design MFA program have varying skill levels when it comes to design. So for some of you, you struggled with some of the design things, so I gave you lots of feedback, lots of insight, lots of secondary sources to help you understand things like hierarchy, typography usage. Maybe you didn't write enough body copy, because you have to think about your target audience. Slip into their shoes, read your ad copy, pretend like you've never heard of this organization before. Does the ad copy tell you enough about the organization, and does it sell you or convince you that you must give them money, or you must go use their services, or that you must now go volunteer for them. So you want to make sure your ad copy really sells your organization. Now I'm going to show some examples of revisions that were done by students and how I sometimes act like the crazy client in the room, because I have experienced, some of you experienced designers may have experienced this as well, but I've had some harebrained questions brought up in client pitch meetings when I'm presenting comps to a client. And they might say something crazy like, I said to this student about this ad. I'm like, okay, first of all, it's for the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence. I kind of get what the student's trying to get at with, our playgrounds aren't safe, but I can't get past the woman's bad hat. I see this woman in this stupid hat holding an automatic rifle, and I can't get past the fact that she's dressed badly, holding an AR. I don't understand what the ad's about. I've just moved on. So I said, what is it that you're trying to get across? Is it that you want mothers with automatic rifles on your playgrounds? No, you want to make sure that your neighborhood playgrounds are safe, that your kids can go out and play. So when I challenged the student, this ad was revised to look like this ad. And I love this ad. This ad shows the mom now relaxed and smiling. She can smile now because her community is safe. She can let her kids go out and play because the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence gave her community the resources they needed to make their neighborhood safe. So this ad with the stupid hat woman turned into this amazing ad that every time I show this, I get chills, because I thought this was such a good example of how sometimes your first thought about a concept, rarely do you hit it out of the park on your first try. Clients are always going to have questions. They're always going to have suggestions. They're always going to want to see something else. So you have to be prepared to throw most of your work away. And I've done that over 30 years of design. A lot of my work ended up in the trash, and it took a couple of iterations. It might have taken, I remember the logo for one of my TV stations went through 78 revisions. We had actually created one and put the sign on the wall because we thought it was final. And the president of the TV station came in and says, nope, I don't like it. Let's start over. So sometimes you're going to go through a lot of revisions. So sometimes you have to think about the comments that are coming in, because your target audience isn't going to maybe understand this woman with the AR rifle on the playground, but everybody can relate to a mom and feeling comfortable and sitting on her front porch knowing her children are safe. This same student, as part of the campaign, wanted to use personification in the form of the gun, and I can't tell who has a mental illness because there's just two guns. There's a big gun and a little gun. I don't know who has a mental illness. I'm not sure what's going on. So again, I gave him some feedback and I said, I think what you're wanting to do is we actually want to hear the gun. So what can the gun say? So he took this ad and revised it into this ad. So now the personification is actually coming through the voice of the gun after the fact, and you can hear the remorse, the tone of responsibility. What have I done? I'm the manifestation of their Second Amendment. Yes, I'm shrouded in their responsibility. When will they learn I should be controlled? So this whole ad is talking about coming through that voice and tone of the gun using personification. Whereas this version of the ad was confusing, this one really gets your attention because it asks, that headline is so strong, what have I done? And you see a gun lying on the ground, that's going to pull you into the body copy where you're hearing the gun give this confessional. So I think that's a really strong example. Something else I put into everybody's feedback is that with these three ads, you are creating a cohesively branded campaign. By that, I mean all three ads should have a similar look and feel. They represent your organization. Sometimes I know I've done ad campaigns where three ads have run in the same publication, so they have a similar look and feel, so that as a reader of a magazine is flipping through, they'll understand on my NPR affiliate, you're going to get Morning Edition, you're going to get Car Talk, and maybe the third ad was for our local program that we're doing. But they all had the look and feel of our station, so as you're flipping through the magazine, you're seeing different ideas about the nonprofit organization. Here's an example of an ad campaign that was done for, I forget what this one's for, but it's like the sweet potato people, the people who grow sweet potatoes. So they use this idea of the sweet potato as the focal point of the ad, and they just gave it different copy each time because they gave it a different concept. So the first one is the first ad is the sweet potato as the palm reader. Then this is about how nutritional the sweet potato is, and it powers potential. And this is another one on nutrition that talks about the actual ingredients, which there's only one, a sweet potato. So that's a cohesively branded campaign. Another thing you might do with an ad campaign is it might run for 3 months. So each month a different ad is going to run in the same publication. This was one a student did, and she came up with this idea for City Harvest about what City Harvest does is they collect food from restaurants, unused food from restaurants, and donates it throughout the city. And this campaign was all about educating people on how the imperfect orange, the imperfect tomato, any imperfect looking piece of produce is perfectly nutritious. So she kind of used the power of fact to drive that point home about how much of the food that is out there is going to waste. And did you know 40% of food grown in the U.S. ends up in the garbage? That's a really huge fact. So this idea of the imperfect piece of produce is all in part to educate people about what City Harvest does. This is what we do, this is why it's important, and this is why we need your help. Again, it's cohesively branded. They all have a similar look and feel. And the final example I'll show you is for Seven Sun. It's a clothing company, and they did a campaign that went across the generations. So you have the 60s over here on the right, the 70s in the middle with the disco look, and then the 80s with that whole I don't know, the headbands and the big hair. So that's a cohesively branded campaign that's selling their clothing items. Okay. It was a lot this week. So I want you to focus on your mastery learning project and take my advice that I give in the feedback. Really focus in on what I told you to do and create that cohesively branded campaign. If you're struggling with design and layout, it's okay to go into the internet and look at ads and how they're laid out. How does this ad, use hierarchy? Well, you can't help but read that headline. It's nice and big and bold. It asks a question, and then you can automatically come over here and read the body copy, and then here's the organization's logo, and here's a tagline being used with the items you need for the call to action, which is go to their website. So you want to go look at, it's fine to copy somebody's layout. When you're a new designer, that's the best way to learn, is to mimic. I know I did that in a fiction writing class. I can't write fiction, but mimicking somebody else's story structure with my own story really helped me understand how the story was supposed to function. So that's the same for design. One time I had to design a banner. I do pro bono work for a nonprofit organization. It's an animal organization in Aspen, Colorado. They needed this big banner for their Splash Day fundraising event. And she tells me that the banner is going to be 23 feet wide by 3 feet tall. So 23 foot by 3 foot. And I had to squish all this information in and all these sponsor logos in. And I was like, wow, this is a design challenge because this banner is going to hang across the main street of Aspen. So instead of freaking out or just slapping something together, I went and did research, and I looked at banners. I just typed in, long banner images on Google and just looked at things. How did people that had a similar design problem solve it? And that really helped me. So don't be afraid to go out there and look at other people's design work and understand how those ads came together and use that information to help you reveal yours. Okay, the campaign research paper, like I said, it's due Sunday of week 4, but you want to start it now because there's a lot of research involved, and that's also going to help you. This research will help you finalize your testimonial ads. So all these projects that we've worked on over the month are supposed to help you design this really strong ad campaign for your nonprofit organization. But the first thing that's up is the tagline writing workshop. So you're going to get your 10 taglines with your 10 rationales into the discussion board post by Friday at 11:59 p.m. discussion board posts cannot have extensions. They your lack of not doing them on time impacts your classmates. So as a result, we have to really stick to the deadlines of discussion boards. So make sure those initial posts are up by Friday, because everybody has to come back and do 3 reply posts on Sunday. Remember, the reply posts are you're choosing 3 classmates, looking at all their taglines, choosing the 3 that work the best and giving a strong rationale as to why those 3 taglines work, and then doing the same thing for 3 taglines that are their weakest and why they are the weakest. Okay? All right, that was a lot. Any questions for anybody that's here tonight? Feel free to open your mic or type in the box. If you're watching this on the archive and you start to work on things and you have questions, or you're watching this archive and you have questions, reach out to me, call me on the phone, shoot me an email, message me through the platform, whatever you feel like you want to do. And I am here to help. I'm an excellent researcher, so if you're struggling with finding research for your nonprofit, I didn't talk about this, but here's a really good tip for finding research. Now, you might not find, you go into the Full Sail Library, you go into EBSCOhost, maybe you go into Academic Search Premier, maybe you can't find your nonprofit organization, but you can do what's called contextual documentation. That basically is what's going on around your topic or around your nonprofit organization. So you can look up things like fundraising for children's charities. How do millennials support nonprofit organizations? So think about what it is you're trying to do and search those things and look for articles that support that. You can also look up your design research in the Full Sail library. So if you're looking for some other resources are in FSO under the About section of this class. There's a handout that has some websites that you can use, like Color Matters has a really cool section on the psychology of color. So get used to, backing up your claims with evidence like I've been harping on all these 3 weeks. Question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi,
All right.
Garland.
Yeah. How you doing?
Good.
Good. So, anyways, I was reading through like the 4.2.1 master's read the testimonial that. So, what you want me to do is try to like, build upon the ones that I posted from the sketches all the way down to like the ones that I use for InDesign, put them in PDF and um.
Yeah. So the ads that you did in InDesign in week 2, you're now going to expand on those. Like maybe you needed
Right.
more body copy, or maybe you needed to put the logo and the call to action in there. So finalize your
Okay.
ads by making sure the copy is good and that they have that cohesive branded look across all 3 ads. Again, do them in
Right.
InDesign, export them as PDFs, and put your 3 revised ads up in the platform. You also have to include a page that talks about the changes that you made. If you disagree with me, that's fine too, but you have to support that argument with evidence as to why you
Right.
disagree with me. Okay, so again, the bullet points are there. I always work with, I look at the bullet points, I understand what I have to do, I go do it, and then before I hand it in, I go back to the bullet points and make sure I did everything, and I check them off. So really,
All
you're
right.
just, we're pretending like this is the next client meeting. They gave you feedback last week, and now they want to see these final ads, and you're going to get them to sign off on them so that you can get them to the magazine.
So I guess it would be best to treat it as like, as you said, pretty much a second client meeting where they want to expand upon whatever I already have.
Right, exactly. And
All
they
right.
want to see it done to like they want to see that final version that's like perfect, and they'll go, that's the one. They give you the signature, and then you prepare the InDesign files and package them and send it off to the magazine per their specs.
All
You're
right
not
then.
doing that, but yeah, but that's what you want to get to, that point where you're absolutely sure these ads are perfect and you're getting ready to send them to the printer.
All right. All right then. Thank you for. That's pretty much it. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Hi, Robin. Any questions?
No, I'm just I've got to do more research on the typography and stuff
Yeah.
of mine. Yeah.
I probably gave you some resources. That typekit.com is like the coolest thing, because you can actually go in there and it works with your Adobe Creative Cloud, and you can test out typefaces together and see how they work and stuff. It's really cool. So you can see how things work before you actually start downloading a bunch of fonts and putting them into the ad and deciding that doesn't work. So, and there's some good chapters in lynda.com tutorials about typography. So, okay.
Wait,
And
you,
I
again,
will work on it.
okay. And again, go back to your swipe file, go look at ads on the internet, see how they're using typography. Okay.
you said it's
I
called
re-
Typekit. Oh, sorry about that.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Typekit. Okay, I'm going to type it
Okay,
in the
hang on.
window. It's typekit.com, and you go in there and you can play with fonts and see how they work together. So it's part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. They have that whole Typekit where you can since you have a Creative Cloud account, you can use any of the fonts that are in Typekit. You're not just limited to what's on your machine that comes with it. Okay. Okay. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, this is a busy week. So do use your time management skills and kind of map out your schedule for the week. I know I had to do that as well because I'm in school at the same time you guys are in school. And I know it's hard to juggle everything when you're working full time and families. And right now I have a dog that's sick and it's probably barfing outside the door as I speak. So, okay. And like I said earlier, if you have any questions about anything as you start to work on it, like maybe you're doing the research paper and you can't find that seventh source or that fifth source, just shoot me a message through the platform and I'd be more than happy to help and give you some insights onto how easy it is to find research. Okay? All right. You guys have a good night, and I will talk to you next week, if not sooner.